News tonight on two developments that could potentially mean new legal trouble for the former president. Reuters was the first to break the story. His one-time personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, was interviewed once again today for a seventh time by prosecutors in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which is pursuing an investigation into the former president. Cohen told a Reuters reporter that he believed today's interview was on the heels of a Supreme Court decision allowing the former president's tax returns and other documents to be handed over to prosecutors. Plus, investigators are interested in the Trump Organization's chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg.
Will you be speaking with the DA about, Trump's family and Alan Weisselberg?
Sometime later today.
And do you think Weisselberg will cooperate with the DA's office?
If he's smart, he would.
Okay. And how important will the tax records and financial statements, the DA's office received after last week's Supreme Court decision, be to the investigation?
Yeah, that sounds to me like the Holy Grail.
And the Wall Street Journal tonight is reporting another audio tape has surfaced of the former president talking by phone with an investigator for the Georgia Secretary of State's office. A phone call different from the one he had with the Secretary of State himself, which you probably heard. So a lot going on. Joining me now is former Nixon White House counsel John Dean, a CNN contributor. So, John, you tweeted about this report in Reuters saying, quote, "From personal experience as a key witness, I assure you that you do not visit a prosecutor's office 7 times if they're not planning to indict those about whom you have knowledge. It's only a matter of how many days until DA Vance indicts Donald and co." End quote. How can you be so confident in that? I mean, isn't the fact that they brought him in for a 7th time, couldn't you also read into it that they're sort of just fishing?
Well, not likely at this stage. What they're doing could be a couple things. One is the prosecutors are trying to get familiar with their witness. More likely in this instance, because of the treasure trove of information that came from the subpoena they recently obtained the evidence from, is to get guidance and insight into what some of those documents mean, give them more people who might know about various affairs that are revealed by the documents. An insider, as I once was, can give insights that prosecutors can't otherwise get. And that's why you're not going to do this to find exculpatory evidence at this point, given the amount of time that's been in this investigation. They're really narrowing their case to decide exactly what they're going to bring against the president and possibly his family.
The allegation of hush money paid to Stormy Daniels, porn star, for example, obviously that's not going to be something as glaring as a line item deduction on the former president's tax returns. In fact, it's has potentially a campaign finance issue. Could Michael Cohen be helping guide investigators on how things might be labeled or documented within the Trump Organization?
Absolutely. As I said, that's the sort of thing insiders would have information to. He knows how he was paid. He knows who signed those checks. They have copies of most of those checks, I think, at this point. So he can tell them why they came in the form they did and why some were signed by apparently Don Jr., some were signed by Weisselberg, the chief financial officer. It's just invaluable to a prosecutor to have an insider who can guide them through the evidence.
I want to talk about this other investigation. You just heard the Wall Street Journal tonight reporting another audio tape that surfaced of a phone call between the former president and an investigator for the Georgia Secretary of State's office. I want to listen to some of what was said.
I won everything but Georgia, and I won Georgia. I know that by a lot, and the people know it. And something happened there. I mean, something bad happened. And if you can get to Fulton, you're going to find things that are going to be unbelievable. Fulton is the mother lode, as the expression goes, Fulton County.
I can assure you that our team and the GBI, that we're only interested in the truth and finding, finding the information that's based on the facts.
It never made sense. And, they dropped ballots. They dropped all these ballots. Stacey Abrams, really, really terrible. I mean, just a terrible thing. And I will say this, when the right answer comes out, you'll be praised.
I'm wondering what you made of the general tone of what was said by the former president. I mean, that excerpt was pretty much him kind of rambling, as I'm sure he did often on this topic.
It's a little bit reminiscent of Nixon leaning on people in my memory bank, where, he knows how far to go, but not too far. particularly when he's on the phone and he knows he's being recorded in some of those conversations. So Trump doesn't know he's being recorded in this instance. And one of the telling things, Anderson, to me, is the fact that these people were recording these calls. As I recall, it was in late November, that Lindsey Graham denied that he'd had the conversations he'd had with the Secretary of State in Georgia, who had, in essence, said that he called and told him to throw out ballots. And Graham denied that. After that, they started recording the calls. We don't know how many calls. This one was reported earlier. We'd never heard it, but there may well be other calls that have been recorded. And what they're looking for, I think, is part of the RICO case they're developing now. The Fulton County prosecutor has hired the best expert in the state who helped her with a prior RICO case. And RICO cases are very serious, Anderson. These are stack on lots of penalties.
That's what was used very effectively against mob families.
Absolutely. That's a friend of mine actually wrote the statute for that purpose. A fellow named Robert Blakey, years ago, a law professor from Notre Dame, designed it to effectively go after the mob, and it was a powerful tool. It has since gone on to be used very effectively against people who commit criminal patterns of behavior, and it's been used at the state level as well. So I think that's the case they're building. These phone calls that they have multiple records of now are going to be dynamite.
I think I saw a documentary, then I guess your friend was in it, because it was fascinating. He was like a professor, and he got called in and went over to the FBI and sort of explained this way, or the Justice Department, and explained this way of what RICO could do, and it was eye-opening for them.
It was, and that statute has since become highly perfected over the years. It's quite broad. Yeah. You find predicate acts of misbehavior, if you will, and those constitute the racketeering activity, and they stack on serious penalties as a result of that.
John D.